So I guess just to start off by saying thank you so much to everybody for joining us today. We're really looking forward to talking about everything women in tech, but specifically about how we can look to demystify female journeys into technology. I guess it could be useful if I start off and give a little bit of an overview and an introduction to myself. So my name is Megan. I am the industry lead at A&S for our retail, transport and hospitality customers, and also our Women in Tech ambassador. I guess just in terms of kind of my own background and personal experience of embarking on a career in technology, my route into tech was slightly different to the normal one. So I traditionally worked in banking and travel for a long period of time, still very much a sales role, but then transitioned into technology. And I found that hugely rewarding and challenging at sometimes, I think it's fair to say, but you know, I've made some great friends and kind of had a lot of professional and personal success from a career perspective. And I guess being really open and honest, something that I wish I would have had the confidence and probably knowledge as well to do that earlier in my career. So I think one of the reasons I'm really passionate about women in tech and helping those outside of the industry, but also younger females to understand what a fantastic opportunity a career in STEM and technology can offer. For those who may sometimes, you know, traditionally be underrepresented in the industry, or potentially lack confidence or the education to look at the tech and STEM as a vocation. So yeah, today is all about how we can demystify the industry, remove some of the tech speak that can sometimes, you know, put prospective candidates off from considering an education or career in technology. You know, that can be across an array of different roles. We've got Judy, who is the CEO and Dean of Teddy University London, who was one of the first female chemical engineers back in the, I think it's 1960s, but I'm going to let Judy tell that story much better than I could herself in a moment. But yes, we've got Judy with us from Teddy London, which is a fantastic university founded by Arizona State, King's College and University of Sydney. She's going to be talking to us today. And we've also got the wonderful Larry Gibbon, who is the UK Sales Director from Microsoft. So ladies, just before I hand over to you both to kind of introduce yourselves and give us a little bit of an overview as to how you arrived to the role that you're in today. Just wanted to kind of open the window to everybody. We've got a chat panel on the right hand side in Teams, which hopefully most of us will be familiar with. We'd love to hear some of your questions today. So as I said, we've got Kate and Lily from our marketing team, and they'll be able to respond to any questions or comments in the chat. And then as we go along, if there's any that kind of pop up, we'll open those up to the floor and have it very much as kind of an informal conversation. And yeah, thank you very much again. And I'll hand over to Larry if you want to introduce yourself first.
Thanks, Megan, and thanks to everyone joining today's session. Delighted to be here and support what a fantastic effort A&S is doing to drive the agenda, really. So, as Megan said, I'm Larry Gibbon. I lead our sales teams in our corporate segment within SMC for Microsoft. What that really means in English, outside of Microsoft terms, is I lead a sales team that's responsible for helping our customers on their cloud journey. Right across their existing investments across the modern workplace, Azure and business applications, so right across our cloud technology stack. We're a team of 33 at the moment. I'm really here to support our customers, whether they're advanced in their sort of cloud strategy or really making that first step. The range of where my team sort of help support customers is quite vast. So I guess just, Megan, building on your question there in terms of how I got to this position and the role I'm in today, I guess I'll give a little bit of a whistle-stop tour. So graduated in 2001 from Cardiff University, a business management degree, and very much, I guess, a tale of two halves, really. The first 5 to 7 years was really building up my sales skills, and I'll openly share, I kind of fell into this industry, to be honest. Fell into tech, fell into sales. I got called by a graduate recruitment company who was placing graduates in, fairly high growth software companies, and decided to just be really open-minded and join McAfee, which was, they've changed their name quite a few times now to Network Associates and back to McAfee. But I joined their graduate sales scheme at the time, and didn't quite know what I was taking on, but the net of it was I found myself in a sales position, cold calling, customers, and kind of really starting at that end of the sort of sales spectrum, really. So pretty tough, and God, I had to learn a lot in that role. It was pretty eye-opening. But what I didn't quite realize at the time was just I was on the cusp of joining a business that was right on the cusp of the sort of huge momentum IT was about to explode with, as the internet sort of ramped up, really. So started my career at McAfee, built again sort of my sales experience there, and moved on to Computer Associates. Spent a number of years there, and had my first management opportunity at Computer Associates, still in the sales domain. So I've stayed pretty true to that course. And then joined another pretty high growth organization called Rackspace. They're in the hosting space. And again, there sort of, was leading a team in the SMB segment, and, had a number of career sort of, promotions there, and was leading the whole segment by the time I left. So that kind of takes me through to the sort of first 10 years of my career, really. I moved from Cardiff to London at the time, and it kind of felt that I was on this treadmill. I was in the rat race, and I was fully embracing it. But at the same time, I had this longing to get back to Wales. And so I decided at that juncture, I was on a great trajectory at Rackspace, but to take a bit of a career break. So I was fortunate to work with Rackspace on a fairly long notice period, hire my backfill, and take 6 months out, and made my way back to Wales. So I found myself buying a bit of a doer-upper, and did that for a period of time, and just took a bit of a break, really, from what was quite an intense IT career at the time, and really took the time at that point to think, what does the next phase of my career really look like as I live in Cardiff and think about the evolution of the tech sector and what that means to sort of, leading teams, where most of my network was up in Reading and in London at the time. So long story short, I joined an organisation called Alert Logic. They were based in Cardiff. Again, was super fortunate for them to be in the high tech. They're a security ISV business based in Cardiff, but allowed me to really lead a team sort of in a hybrid fashion across London and Cardiff, really. So and then I guess brings me more to the today, where I was approached a few years ago. Alert Logic and a number of the other companies that I've just talked about very much worked with Microsoft in the ecosystem for many years, and eventually got the call from Microsoft to explore an opportunity. And whilst I almost said to myself I wouldn't necessarily want to go back and work for a global business, when I really explored the opportunity, it was just pretty hard not to. So joined Microsoft almost 3 years ago now, and I find myself being the early and career sponsor and a mentor on part of our sort of Women in Leadership program, and as I mentioned, as part of my intro, lead a team of 30 odd specialists right across our cloud business. So bit of a whistle stop tour, Megan, in terms of how I got here, but hopefully just a bit of context there that we can obviously dig into various topics as we go through. But maybe I'll hand across to Judy at this point to
thanks, Sally. And so it was 1976 that I graduated as a chemical engineer, Megan. So not quite the 60s, but I am old. It's been a long time. It's been a long time that I've been an engineer. But I went into chemical engineering not knowing anything about it, and the reason I decided to do it was because one of my older brother's friend said, don't do chemical engineering, it's very difficult. So of course I had to prove that I could do it, and I had no idea what I was stepping into, but I loved it. I really loved it. I loved the problem solving. I loved the fact that you were applying science to real things, that you could make a difference. And I did very well, and I couldn't get a job. And you talk about the sort of IT revolution. I was offered a job at Master Foods, which made things like spices, as a data analyst. At that time, there was no computer science. There was no course you could do in computer science, but because I was an engineer, they said, oh, you could be a data analyst. So I'm sure my role would have been a bit more similar to Ellery's if I had taken it. And another job in the patents office. And of course, I didn't want to do that either. I mean, the questions they ask is, do you like to do cryptic crosswords? And I said, no, I just want to solve problems. So I went to do a PhD, and that sort of changed my life. And I've been in research, and you know, I've been an academic all my life, except for 3 years in England in the 80s at Harwell at the Atomic Energy Authority, and at various universities, going through the ranks, very typical of most academics, doing a lot of research until it sort of culminated as being the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research at the University of Wollongong for 10 years. And so I was responsible for all the research in the university. So it's a very senior role. I had innovation as part of my role too. So we had a startup community and lots of big projects, major infrastructure projects. And so I took a turn late in my career to do something very different. And that was to move from Australia to London to start up, to be a CEO of a startup, and that I'd never been before, and to really transform engineering education. And when I was Dean of Engineering at Sydney, I saw what was needed. I saw that there was a lot that could be done, and the value of projects. And so Teddy London started, and we're hoping to take our first cohort in September. We're not a university yet, but we aim to be a university. We're a higher education provider at the moment, but we really are going to transform engineering education by working in partnership with industry to have students not have lectures, not have a lot of theory. The theory that they get, they'll have to learn for themselves, but they will learn from making things, and that's what engineers do. So it's a very, very exciting opportunity for students. So I'm thrilled to be here, but it is a bit of a turn up for, you know, to take this risk at my age and my stage of life.
Wow, I mean, two both very interesting and successful, but also very different journeys, which I'm sure we could talk about all day long. You know, your first role as CEO at Sydney University and some of the kind of significant progression that you had somewhat relatively early on, it seems, in your career at Ellery. How do you both think that the kind of, you know, working industry for women has changed during your time and different roles across technology and STEM over the past, say, you know, 5 to even 25 years? What does that look like?
Well, I'll jump in here because I was thinking about this. You know, when I went for job interviews in the 80s, or 79 is when I finished my PhD. One example was a major oil refinery. So, you know, it's an ideal job, a dream job for a chemical engineer to work in oil refinery. So they flew me down from Sydney to Melbourne in their private jet with 6 other applicants, all men, and for 2 days of interviews down in Melbourne at the oil refinery. The first day was with the HR people and the managers in the offices and everything. Oh yeah, it's fine. You know, you've done well. You'll be fine. The next day was the site visit, and they wouldn't let me on the site because there's no female toilets. Now that seems, in this day and age, that seems unbelievable, but it's true. So what has changed are the laws. You know, is certainly the laws have changed a lot about what you can do and what you can't do, and that obviously you could never do something like that now. But the culture hasn't changed that much. So we in my view, having been around for so long, we really have to keep our eye on the ball. We have to keep talking about it. We have to be accountable. We have to call out people that do things like unconsciously have role models, you know, that don't show diversity all that sort of thing all the time. We can't just let go of the ball as we did in the 90s, where we started to see things improved and then said, oh, well, that's all right. She'll be right. And she's not right. So that's one thing that's changed. And you know, there's a lot more acceptance. You know, people don't tend to have, well, people have meetings at 5 o'clock and early in the morning, breakfast meetings, things, but they're much more tolerant of women or other people that have responsibilities not being able to go. So there's much more consideration now than there used to be.
Yeah, I think just building on your point. Oh, sorry, Megan, just coming in there. I think just building on your point, I think my observation over the last sort of almost 20 odd years is that the most progressive organisations are really driving the agenda and recognising that different perspectives and different diversity beyond just gender groups, the value that difference in perspective can really bring and accelerate the thinking of that organisation. I think, like, I'm fortunate to work for someone like Microsoft that is certainly leading the charge on lots of in this sort of area. But I think the biggest difference I've seen is just we're having the conversation. We're making it top of mind. To Judy's point around even stripping back job descriptions, they don't use masculine language, so we're attracting a diverse candidate pool into the process. When we look for new, as a hiring manager, when we look for new talent, I won't start the process until I have, equality across the candidate list. And so, I think having conversation has been a great shift. And I've seen that even in the meetings that I'm represented in, that, 20, 15 years ago, I was pretty much the only female. I'm sure, Judy, you can all sort of recognise those days. And now it's definitely shifted quite a lot in terms of the diversity in the mix in the room. But we've got to be deliberate, and you've got to break down those specific things when you're looking for talent and that opportunity to bring somebody new into the business, to take that opportunity and be really open-minded to the value that can bring. But it really starts with leadership, and I think I guess you've got to be deliberate and quite calculated in the organisations you join to make sure that the leadership cares about diversity. And that's, I guess, less so about what I've observed, but I've been fortunate, and I think it's been, it served me well to work for organisations that have put diversity at the top of their agenda. And therefore that's allowed me to be my authentic self as I've grown through my career. So I think, that there's lots still to do, but I think, it's on the organisations, it's on leadership, it's on organisations like Microsoft to continue to put the agenda at the top of the list, really. So yeah, just kind of sharing really a lot of the similar examples that Judy shared there, just building a little bit the Microsoft perspective on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think words like accountability and culture, and from this being implemented in like-minded organisations from the top down, is paramount. I mean, just for context, we started our Women in Tech initiative just over 2 years ago at A&S. Our CEO, Paul Shannon, who I think you both know quite well, we recognised that, the female representation at A&S was only 17%. And multitude of different reasons why that is. It wasn't an A&S personal situation. It's happening across all companies, all different locations and verticals. But we felt like we had a responsibility and accountable measures to really try and change that and shift that. So that's kind of where the Women in Tech campaign and role has been created from. We've now got our female representation up to 23%, which we're really, really proud of. Although recognise it's not where we want to be, and there's lots more that we can do. It's so interesting that you mentioned about the laws changing, Judy. I couldn't possibly imagine something similar to the toilet situation happening now. It seems almost like that would be a different life. So fantastic that really important things like that have changed and evolved. But yeah, I think the culture side of things, the accountability, the laws are super important. But I think what we see a lot, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is around the knowledge and education piece. At A&S, we've got our own college and academy that recruits a specific amount of apprentices every year. It helps us grow the organisation organically and train those individuals. And we often find that the pool of talent from a gender perspective is often significantly higher with males than it is with females. And obviously, Judy, you work for a university or in the higher education sector in a area. I know that there's a really successful graduate scheme at Microsoft. How do you think we can, as a whole, start to help create more awareness to girls studying STEM and looking at a vocation in technology, so that, over time that talent pool has that shift to more of a balanced gender almost?
I think we need to market tech a lot better. We have, what television shows do you have that represent engineers or tech, and the Big Bang Theory, which is very funny, but it's not exactly something that is going to universally attract girls to do it. We need soap operas like the medical soap operas. How many medical soap operas are there? Drama shows or legal ones, and they do attract students, or at least people recognize. So in those legal and medical dramas, you need tech people, and you need tech people to be all sorts of people, not just the stereotypes. So that's really important. I think to have stereotypes is a bad thing, I think. And in education, like what we're trying to do at Teddy London is attract diverse range of students, because diversity is really important to us, because we're working on projects, and in order to have the projects work, you need diverse students to be working together in teams. But it's a virtuous circle, because we have diverse students, we're doing good things, the projects are going to be very successful. So they're helping people. We're doing real projects that help people, so it's going to attract diverse students as well. So by making things that affect people, you're attracting, I think, able to attract more girls and more diverse students. And I think it's with tech as well, demonstrating that it's not just calculations or designing something in a room by yourself. It's actually making things that help people improve their standard of living.
Yeah, I'd agree, Judy, in terms of the marketing. There's definitely a social bias and a perception around engineering and tech roles being, again, sort of dominated by masculinity, and just that whole perception. We've just all got a responsibility to just rebrand what a career in tech means, right? It's working across so many different segments and virtual teams. Just the collaboration, the skills that you can build beyond just the technical skills. And a career in tech, whilst, that the industry is just continues to just grow, the opportunities that can give people is just phenomenal. And I think, again, I go back to the sort of organisation that you might look to join, making sure they are progressive and they do care about diversity. And even as far as to say, Megan, you mentioned the sort of graduate programme that we've got on Microsoft. We've moved away from looking for technology or engineering degrees, and we're much more open-minded now to increase our diversity from an intern perspective and from a graduate perspective. So again, we're increasing our opportunity and our chances of having a much more diverse individual join our teams, just by changing the lens of you must have this degree, for example. A small steps that we've taken to help us with that sort of perspective, really. But I think it's just on all of us to just call out the positivity around what a career in tech or career in engineering might mean, the opportunities, the opportunity to learn, and I think gone are the days that we're in a tech industry. Every business has tech at the heart of it these days. So every business is a digital business. So what a phenomenal opportunity to just, be a part of that. And so we've got we've got growth mindset at the heart of us here at Microsoft, and it's about being a learn it all culture, not a know it all culture. And if you have that kind of value that you sort of, you know, work towards, then I think it encourages just the openness of the types of individuals that you think about having as part of your team, and that increases our diversity. And just, yeah, so I think it's so many different layers to it, but it does start with all of us just really sponsoring the positivity of being part of our sectors, and you know, longer term, like I said, every company is a digital business these days, so there's no getting away from it, really.
Yeah, it's such a valid comment, and it's only going to go that way even more so, isn't it? It's not going in any other direction. Thanks both. We've got two really good questions in the chat, which I'm going to share with you. What one's more of a comment actually from Angela Crook. Angela has worked in IT for many years across an array of different roles, but never had the aspirations to work in IT from kind of a school level, which is quite similar to myself actually. I think the aspiration for me personally is probably a little bit different. For me, it was more just not knowing the art of the possible. You know, speaking to your careers advisors, you get the option to study maths, English and science. To be fair, I did study IT at GCSE level, but it was very much PowerPoint focused and how to, you know, do formulas on Excel. It doesn't really give you that exposure to what, you know, engineering could look like, or being a sales director for a global organisation. So I guess just to acknowledge your comment really, Angela, I think it's everybody's responsibility to create the awareness for, you know, all different ages. If you look at the careers knowledge portal that we've created at A&S to help you know, people from out of industry and people, you know, students at colleges to understand what a day in the life may look like of a project manager that works for a technology company, or a data scientist that works at A&S, but then also marketing and sales and all different roles. You don't have to be a data scientist or a coder to work for a digital company. Equally, you can do whatever you want within those organisations. But I think, just going back to Angela's point, those, you know, offers are not typically there at schools, and it is kind of finding how we have that reach and scale to help young people understand what their options are beyond your traditional titles. I thought that was a really interesting comment. And then probably a question actually from Catherine Allen. So Catherine has got a friend who is a highly skilled engineer. She shared with us that she's on a significant salary, which, you know, is fantastic. She's worked in oil as at lead level for some time, and I believe that she is potentially looking to move direction, but she's being badged with, oh well, you know, you've worked in oil, that's all you can do. And when she's submitting a CV to some, you know, different companies, she's getting pushed back a little bit. Interested in Judy's thoughts, but also Larry's how to get around that. If it's okay, I'll just kind of start off and add a very kind of high level view. And I think Larry touched on it before. I think we've really got to be careful and accountable for the organisations that we choose to work for. If you look at how we recruit and I recruit, you know, right across the teams and culture at A&S, we recruit on attitude and accolade, because you can teach the other things. And fundamentally, if that is being instilled again from some of the comments we had from Larry and Judy before at the top down, we want diversity. We don't just want, you know, the best candidates from the best universities, and we recruit from all different backgrounds, all different genders, all different sexes, ethnic groups, etc., etc. So I think it really is the importance of that candidate to do the research, and appreciate that can obviously be very hard, but trying to pick out the organisations that you feel are a good fit for yourself.
I think you need to concentrate on your transferable skills. So you'll, you know, the person will have lots of skills, and skills that they've learned not just from all those years in the oil industry, but also if they're a mother, you know, or the things that they do in their for their spare time. You know, those also give you skills. And I would just say recraft my CV in a way that shows what your skills are, and then the fact that you've worked in the oil industry for such a long time is just a byproduct. Still, it's there, of course, but it's a byproduct of it.
Yeah. Hey, Jodie, it's almost like we rehearsed this, and I promise we didn't, because obviously the questions just come in live. But just to illustrate exactly what Judy's just mentioned there is.
Oh my god.
Oh, I think someone might have come off mute there. I was just going to build, Judy, on your point there around the CV. I've recently, just in the last year, hired somebody into the sales team who is a captain in the Marines. So as you can imagine, his CV did not speak anything IT in the slightest. But through sort of 9 months of meeting, coaching, testing the motivation, and he was exiting the military anyway and looking for his next move. But one of the things we did was to rebadge his skills and try and map them to some of the terminology that would resonate with the broader industry. So that's certainly one tactic. 100% agree, and I've mentioned it before. You know, trying to seek out organisations that are open-minded, diverse in terms of the skills they look at. I'm more than happy. I don't know whether I can help or not, but the offer is there if you wanted to pass on my details to help with some of the CV shaping. You know, more than happy to offer there. But I think it does come back to sort of the transferable skills message that Judy landed there, around thinking more broadly around the mindset of what someone's learned, the skills that are transferable, the collaboration, the communication. They're all general skills, but incredibly impactful to just broad business impact, and what people really should be looking for when they're hiring for talent. You know, if you get those types of skills, then again, the sort of tech or the industry you can learn, right? Yeah, offer is there to either help if we can, but I will certainly echo both Megan and Judy's points on being deliberate on the organisation and translating the CV language to more broad terminology would certainly help with getting past the initial gates.
And maybe looking at companies that service the oil industry as well. If you can represent the customer, you know, I had the experience of being invited to join a board of a insurance company that insured universities, and I thought, God, what do I know about insurance? You know, I had no knowledge of insurance and all that goes on. But because I was a research administrator, I knew all about research. I knew all about the risk, and I knew all about the importance of the research data that might be lost. So I was very useful to that board, to the insurance company. So also look at that when you're looking at the companies that you might work for.
Yeah, I think the last piece I would add is that, you know, LinkedIn is our shop window, and I guess making sure that their external presence on something like LinkedIn is visible, and trying to find, again, a network, a sponsor, someone that can help champion you in will definitely, again, help create a bit of openness. Getting past that sort of first gate with maybe a recruitment team would be just the last tip that I would give.
Amazing, thank you both.
About the male champions of change.
Yeah, definitely. Amazing. Okay, so I guess just to close this loop off then, before we touch on a slightly different area, but still under the same topic. What advice would we give to females or males? We've actually got some males on the call today, which is lovely, and I think Hamish has just got some questions in as well around what practical tips would we give to our male allies to help build more of a balanced and inclusive culture, which is wonderful. Thanks, Hamish. But yeah, I guess just to close that loop, and we'll pop back to that question. What advice would we give to females and males that are considering a career in STEM?
I would say go for it. Just, you know, it's I always say engineering and you know, STEM and technology is the liberal arts degree of the 21st century, because as Ellery said before, every company needs tech. You know, there's a shortfall of 50,000 engineers just in the UK every year. So we need people that can design things, people that are numerate, people that want to solve problems. And the world has tech, so it's a great skill to have. So I would just say go for it. It's a fantastic career.
Yeah, I'd echo that. Look, be open-minded. I feel like I'm like a stuck record. Be deliberate on the organisation and the manager. So the organisation is one thing in terms of living up to their values, and they might have diversity, but really dig in to whether they live those values and live that diversity agenda sort of in the day-to-day. So be, you know, really clear and sort of be, you know, just be confident in asking those questions. How do they think about diversity? What are they doing to help, you know, champion that movement? And just be your authentic self. You know, again, an organization that is worth their weight in gold will value that authenticity and the perspective that you bring. So yeah, but for me, it's about being deliberate on the organisation and being deliberate on who you work for. Because if you work for a really strong manager, leader, they will unblock you. They will help you find a path. They'll connect you to a sponsor or a mentor that can help champion you. And that's another one I would say is sort of seek out a few mentors that can help coach you, whether it's getting around the organisation and someone like Microsoft, that's huge. And so, you know, being quite deliberate on building sponsors in different parts of the business, but also again can give you different perspectives as well. So yeah, that'd be
both really good answers. Particularly really relates to yours, Larry, kind of being relatively early on in my career. I'm a big believer in your internal relationships are as important as your external relationships, and I don't necessarily think that's just a sales role either. I think it's very relevant to all industries in all different environments. But you know, for me personally, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, the opportunity really is infinite. And we recorded our culture video a couple of weeks ago, which was really funny, but a different story completely. And one of the guys that had been here for I think about 12 years, he's not that old either. He just had a little snippet in there to say that, you know, working in tech, at INS specifically as well, has just given him the best education that he's ever had. So yeah, to back both of your comments, go for it and open your mind, and yeah, enjoy yourself, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Find a job you love and then work another day. So
love it. So yeah, an amazing question from Hamish. What do we think, or what do we see for male allies in the tech sector and which? So I think the question's around kind of how can we leverage our male allies to help build more of a balanced and inclusive culture. I mentioned that our CEO Paul is very inclusive and diversity focused. Adam Spur, who heads up our dynamics team as well. There's a lot of people internally which really support our different campaigns, not just from a women in tech perspective, some of the social corporate responsibilities we have and other initiatives as well. But I'm always keen to understand how we can do more as well. So it'd be lovely to hear from, you know, both of yourselves, and if any comments want to go in the chat, please pop them in.
Go on, Larry.
Well, I was just going to say, I think for me, it's the impact of being visible in being that champion and driving, whether it's a workshop and just ideation around what else can be done. And just importantly, it is just calling anything out that you see that is not inclusive. Again, beyond just gender, that is where, you know, again, it speaks volumes. So I think just the impact of being visible is huge. You know, leading from the front in terms of the shape and how diverse their own teams are, again, speaks volumes. And then speaking out and calling out if they do see something, again, it's more about showing that they're taking action and not just sort of talking about it. And I think can be hugely impactful. We've got our own employee resource group internally, and we've got so many senior leaders that are males that are championing and sponsoring that. So it's just really important to be visible, but also then taking the action, and that their own teams are also represented in that living up to the diverse commitments. I think all can make such a big difference. So yeah, be present, be active, and be that voice for change that can help hugely.
And I would say be authentic. Everybody can see straight away if you're just mouthing the words and talking out of a textbook what's expected. So be authentic, and I'm sure most people that want to do it are. But I think as with any leadership, I think you really have to take pleasure in the success of the people that work for you, and I think if you take pleasure in the diverse team that you build, that is a really good sort of role model to set.
Yeah, I'll give you one example that happened the other day. I'll be very quick, Megan, with this example. But one of my managers, I mean, he's an amazing male ally. He's been with the business a long time, but this is how far he took his commitment, where a customer was inappropriate on a call, and the extent he went to call that customer, to actually call the customer out on what had happened based on the feedback of his team member. That is taking action. But my God, how impactful was that for the individual and the team in a sales leadership role? The consequence of managing that very sensitive relationship with a customer, if not handled well, could have been, hugely detrimental to the business. But it's also on us to take action in the most difficult scenarios. And so, I mean, amazing credit to him, but what a male ally in that scenario. And I think the other thing, I guess, from a business perspective, more broadly than just what the male allies can do, but just creating more awareness around allyship. What is allyship? Even just taking a view that everyone's coming at this with their best intentions, and I think everyone's on a bit of a journey on different sort of change curves with how they think about diversity, inclusion. I think just creating more awareness and training for individuals, knowing that everyone probably wants to do their best, but they might not know how. So I think it's just on all of us to just keep that awareness and training for individuals to sort of drive that consistency and drive that awareness to be able to call it out. So yeah, I just thought that was a great example of just male allyship in action in quite a sensitive situation, actually. So yeah, just wanted to share.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that story with us. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall of both conversations. It sounds like a difficult situation, but one that's been handled very, very well from your side. And I guess the individual teams that were involved in that kind of, maybe certainly from a subordinate layer, probably went home and were so worried, but then after the action, that maybe was it Rich that took the action, or some of the wider team, my apologies, just must have felt really supported in the role, and that is just so impactful, right?
Yeah, and actually the feedback was received really well, because I think, again, coming from a position of best intentions, that some things can be misconstrued, and so it's just highlighting it. And so it was handled really well, and all things worked out. But I just think it's about taking action. Back to Judy's point around, people can see through if it's not authentic and we're just saying the words and not taking action. So again, I think more broadly than just what male allies can do, but certainly being visible there would make a huge difference, huge impact.
Yeah, definitely. We're kind of, I guess, touching on the importance of role models as well there, aren't we? I guess it's a bit of a double-ended kind of brush, if that's the saying. But I think, the awareness, the male allies, the importance of the seniority of businesses supporting and recognising the importance of these initiatives. All of that together, as well as having role models for young people, for people that are new in their careers, taking a change in careers, all of that together is just equally as important, and I think really does drive that force forward of creating impact, creating the awareness. And I think we've both touched on this before. It's a continuity of doing these things, and it's also the responsibility that I think everybody has to have this awareness of diversity, of inclusion, of creating a balanced workplace and a safe environment for people to bring the best and worst selves of the work to. We all have bad days. We need to support each other and educate each other. I think it's just so important and really, really refreshing. So yeah, thanks both. I guess then kind of just to close up, both really relevant actually in terms of where we've got to, but how do we I guess what are some practical actions? We've touched on a couple of areas today of candidates that are maybe being tarnished with a particular capability because they've worked in that sector for a long period of time. We've spoken about the importance of choosing the kind of right environment where you can map your value to that organisation to work for. We've spoken about some of the initiatives that we're doing here at A&S and some of the campaigns and relative initiatives that Teddy London and Microsoft are doing. I think it'd be really nice to kind of close up on some practical actions that businesses like Microsoft, Teddy and A&S can take to bring diversity and inclusion to the top of their agenda as well.
Well, I think trying to empower everybody to call out things that they see, I think is important. So instilling a culture of open-mindedness and courage and not fear is really important, because I think until we all pick up everything we notice, because most of the time it's not intended. It's if there's a choice between a conspiracy and a cock up, pick the cock up all the time. That's what I've been taught. But so it's really mostly not intended, but we just have to call it out in an authentic way. So empowering everybody to do that, not just the leaders. So that's important. I think in terms of education for Teddy London, we're trying to do it by changing the education. So we're changing the entry requirements as well as the education. So it is turning it upside down. So it's more attractive to a diverse range of students, not just boys, as has traditionally been the case. So those are the sort of things that we're doing. For large companies, I'm going to hand over to Ellery.
Thanks, Judy. Yeah, I think we've touched on quite a few of the areas really. I guess that we're being really intentional on living up to the values and empowering people with the message that to call something out that you think is not inclusive. I've touched on if you're in a position where you're hiring, then take the opportunity to have a really open mind in terms of having diverse perspectives and think about the job descriptions. We've recently just gone and literally rewritten some of ours to make sure that, again, the language is much more inclusive. And again, that will sort of open up the candidate pool. And then internally sort of, create that community. So we've got a number of communities, from an early career community to a Women at Microsoft community to a military ERG community. I think just creating some of that community where, again, those champions and male allies and sponsors get together to continue to drive the agenda forward on what else can be done. I'm just going to keep talking about it. I know it sounds basic. We've just got to keep talking about what else we can do, measure the performance, review it often, and, share the ambition with the organisation. What is the ambition for representation, and just what can everyone do to help towards that goal. I think just being really open and candid with how you want to represent the business, and we certainly want to represent our customers, and our customers are diverse, and why would we not want to represent our customers? And so I think if you just keep all of that in mind and just being really deliberate in every opportunity you've got to hire somebody new into the team, just take that opportunity to have a really open mind. I think the rest of it, I think we've touched on, Megan. I think a few times really, and just advice would just be be careful who you work for, and making sure that diversity is top of mind for those individuals. And if you don't feel it is within your own organisation, like, table a topic. Just be really confident in putting the topic on the table.
Yeah, 100%. I think as we've covered in lots of the different areas today, the knowledge, the awareness, the educational side of things, having an open environment to speak is paramount. And albeit a bit of a pun, because the wording of the webinar today was around demystifying journeys into tech, and we've spoken a little bit about demystifying what a career in tech can look like, and some of the acronyms that can put prospective candidates off. I think even from a women in tech and diversity inclusion perspective, those are both, well, three very popular words that are used a lot and heard a lot. But as you said, Julie, it's not necessarily intentional, and it is just sometimes, what does that actually look like? How can we do more, and how can we make an impact? And I think with these types of conversations that we're having today, and some of the other ones that have been referenced, I think it's all going in the right direction. And I guess just to close up and say thanks very much for some great answers, great questions from the audience. It's been really nice speaking to you. And yeah, thanks again.
Thanks for having us, Megan. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks everybody. Take care. And any questions, please do reach out.